This is the Litigator's Edge podcast with your host, Aniket Sawant.
Hello, and welcome to today's episode of The Litigator's Edge, a podcast where innovative attorneys reveal the strategies that have transformed their legal practice. My name is Aniket Sawant, and I'm co-founder and CEO of Threadio. I'm super excited today because we have not one, but two distinguished guests on the show. We have Jimmy Wilkins, a partner at Watkins & Eager based out of Jackson, Mississippi. And we have Frank Ramos, a partner at Goldberg Segalla based out of Miami, Florida. Jimmy, Frank, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Awesome. So, Jimmy and Frank, as we spoke when we met briefly earlier, I'd like to start by asking each of you to please share either a fun fact about yourself or a cringe joke for our audience. Which will it be, and what is it for each of you?
Well, I guess I don't think I want to tell a cringe joke. I will tell a fun fact. In addition to practicing law, I do have an extensive cookbook collection. So I probably own about 1,000.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Are there any specific recipes that you particularly enjoy making? Or?
Since I grew up in Mississippi, I have Southern recipe cookbooks, Mississippi recipe cookbooks, Tex-Mex, Mexican, Louisiana cooking, and then grilling.
That sounds really good.
Yes.
That sounds awesome. Well, thank you, Jimmy, for that. Frank?
Yeah, so I really enjoy writing, and I've written some short stories under pen names in the past, and there's been a couple of novels I've started and put down than anything. And so hopefully one of these days I'll write the great American novel. But that's my hobby that I enjoy.
That's fascinating. I definitely look forward to that. Between the cookbooks, I mean, nothing like reading Frank's book while eating one of Jimmy's meals. I think that'd be fantastic. It'd be fantastic. Awesome. Well, so Jimmy and Frank, I think of every attorney who makes the time to come on this show as a superhero, and every superhero has an origin story. What is yours?
Well, I grew up in the Mississippi Delta in a very small town, Jonestown, Mississippi. I went to college at Alcorn State University, finished at Alcorn in 1994, went to Tulane University in New Orleans, graduated in 1997. I clerked for a federal judge for a year, and then I came to Watkins & Eager in 1998, where we do primarily civil defense litigation.
And I didn't realize me and Jimmy graduated the same year. I also graduated in 97. I grew up in Chicago. Jimmy looks much younger than me. I grew up in Chicago in the 70s and early 80s, moved to Miami in 86, went to high school, college, and law school here, and been here ever since. I started with a national defense firm, then switched to a much smaller boutique litigation firm, and now my last year have gone back. They say you can't go back home, but went back to a big national firm now at Goldberg Segalla, and I do products, general liability, commercial, a sundry other things.
Very cool. Can we maybe double click on that a little bit and walk through some of the key milestones in each of your respective journeys towards becoming the professionals that you are today?
I yield to Frank.
Well, I mean, I grew up in the 70s and 80s in kind of a rough neighborhood in inner city Chicago. And it's cool. I wrote a book, actually. It's a very short book called Confessions of a Latino Lawyer. You can find on my profile on LinkedIn. It was published through the Defense Research Institute. And it's sort of a book focused on diversity and how firms can do a better job handling diversity matters. But I provide my personal story there in terms of growing up Latino in inner city Chicago. And coincidentally, I lived right across from McPherson High, which at the time and for many years after I left was the sort of center of operations for the Latin Kings, which was a national street gang that was birthed and expanded from Chicago. And just coincidentally, that was where they operated. And being Hispanic, being Cuban descent, they wanted me to join. I didn't want to. My old man certainly didn't want to. And ended up getting into a lot of fights and tussles at an early age until I was 14 when we moved from Miami to Chicago. But those early formative years kind of focused my attention on a number of issues in terms of people being bullies, in terms of different vantage points and perspectives, who you are and your self-identity and how you view yourself. And that kind of carried with me for the rest of my life. And the point of the book I wrote, Confessions of a Lawyer, was that often we don't really understand or appreciate each other because we don't know our stories from each other's lives. Yep. And if we took the time to learn more about that, we would be able to, go off those bridges that we have. So those early formative years kind of dictated for me a lot of the way I see things, in terms of the way I view things, in terms of how I approach things. And that's never really left me. It was not an easy bringing, to say the least, but it helped define for me a lot of the way I view the world and the prism through which I see it.
Yeah. And for me, my dad was the mayor of the small town where I grew up, and we had a legal counsel. The town had a legal counsel. His name was Tyree Irving, and they would discuss all the town's business. And whenever they came to a problem, the mayor, which was my dad, and the board would always turn to the lawyer and ask the lawyer, "Can you help us solve this particular problem?" And they had great respect for the lawyer, and they heeded his advice. And so I grew up thinking that lawyers are well-respected people in the community, but they are also complex problem solvers. And so that shifted me to wanting to be an attorney, because I like solving complex problems, which is what we pretty much do on a daily basis.
Absolutely. Those are some wonderful stories. I would, it's Frank, you make the point about, how different our interactions would be, if only we knew each other's stories. And that's so true just from hearing both of your stories here. Picking up on your point, Jimmy, of being a complex problem solver, can you maybe share, and both of you, an example of a particularly complex problem that you had to solve maybe earlier on in your career that has maybe had a deep influence on how you evolved as a litigator?
People come to you all the time. I remember I represented a doctor who was from a foreign country, but he was here, I believe, on a work visa, and something happened with some treatment, but he wasn't at fault at all. And he was subject to maybe being deported or losing his license. So I got in and represented him and showed that he had no fault, and that anything that happened was not his fault, and he shouldn't be penalized or sent out of the country because of that. And that had a big effect on me, because it literally saved him, and he was able to continue practicing medicine here in Mississippi. So that was I think, a chance where I can see where you can really have an effect as a lawyer.
Yeah, my story's a little bit different. Mine is more personal. Early on, I had a lot of jitters and fears about public speaking. And later in my career, probably much too late, I really undertook trying to do a lot more public speaking and doing a lot more presentations, and probably within the last 10 years. And that allowed me to become much more effective communicator, orator, ability to do better in court, try cases. And so for me, it was sort of a behavioral modification. I had to confront my fear of it and address it head on by just doing the thing that scared me. And the more I did it, the less afraid I became. And now it's pretty second nature. And so there's a lesson learned. Don't let the things that scare you prevent you from achieving your goals, your dreams, because often if you can get past that hurdle, you can do a whole lot with the resources and talents you have.
Very well said. Thank you for sharing that, Frank and Jimmy. If we now switch gears a little bit to the use of technology and legal in the legal profession, you both have had distinguished careers as litigators, but obviously have independently arrived at this shared passion that you clearly have for legal tech. Can you each talk about your individual journeys towards embracing technology and AI? And was there a specific moment or point in time that triggered or catalyzed your interest?
Yeah, well, I really became more serious about technology. I met a guy named Bob Christie, and he put on this program called FedTech U, and I attended, and it showed you how to practice law on your iPad, and that was completely transformative for me. So that was in the year 2017 and 2018. So that was a moment where I really began to double click on using technology. And what I found that technology helps you become extremely organized, at the highest level. So that's the main thing that I like about technology. And so that's primarily the way I use it. It's been a great organizational tool. That was one of my biggest weaknesses when I was a young lawyer, is controlling all the paper, being organized. But now with the iPad Pro and the AI tools, you can just be completely on top of everything. So now people think I'm the most organized person in the world, but it's because of the technology.
Yeah, and for me, my sort of approach with technology is more recent. I want to say around 2020 through, when AI started getting into the collective consciousness. I was really fascinated by it, having grown up reading a lot of fiction, especially in science fiction. I found the whole area of AI to be fascinating. And when I believe ChatGPT 4 came out in March of 2023, and it passed the bar at the 90th percentile, that really captured my imagination. I spent a lot of time since then, now it's just about 2 years now, where I've kind of just jumped in the deep end of the pool with regards to artificial intelligence and learning everything there is, especially in the legal space and how lawyers can use it. Not only firms like ours, but in-house counsel and claims departments. So that's been my journey, a bit more truncated than Jimmy's, but certainly have done is everything I can to get caught up and better understand and appreciate AI for legal professionals.
Makes sense. So as defense lawyers who often deal with, catastrophic injury, complex product liability, premises liability cases, and so on and so forth, how do you see advanced AI and other advanced technologies changing the specific dynamics of the defense work that you do today as well as in the future? Are there unique opportunities or challenges in leveraging these tools from a defense perspective?
Well, I can just give you an example where I think the AI tools in particular are going to help. The AI tools, I've noticed that they understand language very well, in my experience. And so, say for example, you have a motion hearing, I can just load in the motion that I wrote, the plaintiff's response, and then my rebuttal. And when I'm preparing for an argument, I can just say, can you give me some main points to argue based on the motions, and then give me some points the plaintiff may argue, and then give me some points I can state in rebuttal. And it comes back extremely fast. It'll have the bullet point of the main argument and the sub points under that, and it's just a tremendous starting point. And so I can say, then I can add little notes here and there, but it does an outstanding job. So I think you're gonna have to get up to speed a lot quicker. Also, when you're writing briefs, if you got the complaint and the answer and then maybe the police report, you can load that into an AI tool, and it can come up with a pretty good summary of the facts just based on loading that in. So I think that's going to change the way we practice. Now, the lawyers will still have to do the heavy lifting, what cases should apply, what statutes we should argue, things like that. But the basic routine facts are outlining the points. I think that can be done by the AI tools. So I think that's going to be the big difference going forward.
Yeah, and from my vantage point, I think AI will really help with the two extremes. On the one side, in terms of a lot of the more basic and what some people would consider more fungible work, a lot of the review and summarization of records and sort of basic discovery that's often pushed off to younger lawyers or paralegals, which is actually the basis for their training, which is there create certain problems long-term in terms of what do you do with these individuals who are just starting out when we get to the point where AI can basically do most of the things we're asking to do now. But certainly in the areas of reviewing, summarizing medical records, depositions, transcripts, files, whatever else, AI is getting much better at doing those types of tasks and doing it very well. And not only just doing it, but doing it on the terms and conditions you wanted in terms of whether it's bullet points or long form or active voice, whatever it might be. And so we're going to see, especially with larger firms that rely on this type of work that is time consuming, but yet can be largely alleviated through artificial intelligence, what's going to happen to those firms? Is AI going to replace individuals? It's going to replace a number of the tasks that we do. And if those tasks are the type that are done repeatedly over and over again for large periods of time, invariably you're going to see a contraction, especially at the lower levels of firms when it comes to less experienced lawyers and paralegals. And then conversely, I think AI also helps us with big brain thinking in terms of brainstorming and conceptualizing things. And so when it comes to thinking about how to question a jury, how to come up with an opening theme, it's very good at helping you evaluate and think of those ideas. So ironically, in terms of the middle, I'm sure it'll serve certain roles as well, but in terms of condensing and taking over a lot of the minor tasks and then assisting, but not replacing, but assisting us with the more high level thinking tasks, I see it's going to really reconceptualize law firms and how they operate.
Frank makes an excellent point. Let's say, for example, if I'm deposing an orthopedic surgeon, I can draft my outline out, and then I may go to the AI tool and say, let's say my outline is maybe 89 out of 100. Well, I can go to the AI tool and say, hey, can you give me just a few more questions? And it may give me 75 questions, and I may use 10 of those. And then now my outline goes from an 89 to say a 93 or 94. So I think AI tool can help you add a few more points to your performance, but you still have to do the hard work as a lawyer, but it can help add a few more points to your performance, which I think is what we're all striving for.
Absolutely. Yeah, Frank, your characterization of the spectrum of, automating or taking care of some of the initial heavy lifting tasks on the one end, and then also helping with the big picture thinking of the other. And that's a unique and insightful characterization. So thank you for sharing that. One of the things we all hear, and I'm sure with the two of you being at the forefront of evangelizing legal tech and especially AI, how do you filter the signal from the noise? There's a lot of vendors out there who claim to have AI infused across all of their products and their operations, and there's just a constant bombardment, or it seems like that these days. So how do you decide which specific tools or techniques are truly ready for prime time in the work that you do versus those that may seem more half-baked or not quite ready or even just hype?
Yeah, the main thing I like to do is just to test the tool in actual practice, and then you'll know fairly quickly if the tool can really help you. But if there was say if a developer had an excellent concept from the start, there's an app called Loom that I use for video editing. And it was a good app to start with, but then they added the AI to it. So now you can just edit the video using the AI tool, just double click in here, take this out, and it'll identify all the pauses and take that out automatically. So I think that the tool is good to begin with, and then they put AI on top of it. I think that's going to be a great tool.
Yeah,
Very
and
cool.
I think with regards to new platforms, there are good ones and there are bad ones. There's everything in between. And I think any firm, any legal team, any individual or company considering to adopt a platform has to look at how others are using it, ask for a short-term license to try it out on their own, get references, referrals to talk to people in your space and asking what their experience has been. And then take a close look at whatever licensing agreement or contract you're going to sign, because you want to make sure whatever data they're going to be using from your system is going to be protected and secure. So whatever you do, there's a long process involved before you sign and secure a long-term contract with whatever platform or service you want to use. And that requires a lot of due diligence on the part of the ultimate user.
Makes sense. You mentioned security. One of the other parts, in addition to security, is making sure that the AI itself is being used in an ethical manner. I know that both of you have shared your viewpoints in various fora on this. What are some key practical steps or guardrails that you've implemented in your own work or recommend that others implement when using AI tools, particularly around confidentiality, verifying accuracy, and things like that?
Well, when you're dealing with some of the public tools, say like Claude and ChatGPT and Perplexity, tools like that. First of all, I like to get the paid versions. You have a few more protections on that. But when I'm using those platforms, I just use what I call a New York Times rule, meaning that you got to be comfortable. Anything you upload to it, you have to be comfortable with it appearing in the New York Times, say on page 10. So if you follow that, I think that would really help you kind of stay out of trouble, because we want to use the tools. And also, the tools are so sophisticated now, you don't have to really give them know the name of your client or anything like that. You can just state in generic terms, hello, I'm going to be deposing an orthopedic surgeon. I want to try to establish that the plaintiff had a pre-existing knee problem. Can you give me some questions? That's just a very basic, generic, hypothetical. I think if you keep it like that, the tool does an amazing job of giving you what you need.
Right. And to sort of piggyback on that, I think the two big rules, I speak a lot on the ethics as does Jimmy about the use of AI by lawyers and others. Rule number one is if you're using an open model, you're not disclosing or including confidential information. And rule number two is that if you're asking it for a fact-based question, or you're asking it for information, what a case says or what a statute says, you have to go back and verify. And if you follow those two rules, where on the one hand, you're not including or enclosing confidential information in an open model like ChatGPT or Claude or something else. And then number two, when you get the response, if it's not something like, if it's brainstorming, obviously it's brainstorming. There's nowhere to go to corroborate or confirm. You base your experience and determine this is a good or bad outcome. But when it comes to, let's say, finding a case or finding a fact, whatever the fact may be, you can't assume it's correct. You always have to go back and corroborate, which begs the question, if you have to do that, why do it at all? And my response to that would be that it takes less time to get a response, even if it's a wrong one from one of these platforms, and go double check it than doing it from scratch. And whenever you use these platforms, it's step 1 or 2 of the process. It's not step 9 or 10.
And then another thing you can also do is sometimes I will have a certain area of the law, and there are 4 or 5 cases that apply. I will put them into a project and just have the applicable cases there and the applicable statutes, and then I can have the AI tool crank out. Some of my client may ask me, well, what's going to be your plan on drafting summary judgment regarding lack of notice in a slip and fall case? And then I can just tell the AI tool to kick out what the law is, and it does it fairly efficiently. And then you can pivot based on the cases too. Like say you may want to send something to the appellate counsel or the national counsel, or you want to include what the law is in a settlement memorandum or mediation position paper. So you can take it 10, 12, 13 different directions, but you've already told the AI to, here's the law, here are the cases, and then you can reevaluate and recalibrate based on what your particular situation is.
Makes sense. So it sounds like the use of AI-enabled tools are just the latest in a long line of technologies that at least the two of you and many others in the legal profession have been using. So if I piggyback off of that and go back to a statement that you made earlier, Jimmy, which is that you started by using technologies to help you become more organized. And so and you use the iPad Pro. What advice would you give to a litigator who is looking to build their own technology stack to help them become a more effective litigator, maybe starting from the basic hardware and software to some of these more advanced AI tools?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is to just simply get started. And sometimes lawyers feel like, well, if I do that, I have to go completely paperless. Well, no, the first time I used an iPad Pro, I used it in a deposition. Or I may have used it with one witness in a trial or one police officer that I interviewed, and just grow from there. Don't feel like you got to just 100% redo everything you're doing. You can just gradually go into it as your comfort level increases, but just start small and then just expand. And also, I still use yellow legal pads also, so you don't have to give up your old things, but just consider, to be a good lawyer, you got to have maybe you have a legal pad, maybe you have an index card, and then you also have your iPad Pro and your PCs and Macs too. So all of those can play in the same space. You just have to be smart about which tool is best for a particular situation. So don't feel like you got to completely redo everything or completely dive into 20 feet of water. You can just gradually get into it and just go from there. So
that's great advice. Yeah, because otherwise it becomes an all or nothing deal, and then folks just would prefer to stay on the nothing side rather than the all side. That makes sense.
Yeah, because for some reason, lawyer, I guess it's the way we think. Okay, either I'm paperless, or I'm not paperless. I'm Apple, or I'm Microsoft. I'm Windows, or I'm MacBook. It doesn't have to necessarily be that way. You don't have to just 100% commit to any one particular technology, but just start with just one or two tools and one or two situations and just grow it from there.
Yep. Makes sense. Switching gears a little bit, going back to sort of your own journeys and then the way you've collaborated over the years within the community around legal tech. So both of you have presented relatively frequently at the national level on various topics in legal tech. I've had the privilege of seeing you both in action quite a few times, and it's been phenomenal. How did this partnership come about? And how do you use your individual experiences to focus on different aspects of the content that you're presenting?
Yeah, Frank and I are both members of the FDCC. It's an outstanding group of defense lawyers, and that's where we met and started. I think we did a presentation in Canada on AI, and one of the things we kept hearing was everybody's always talking about theoretical use of AI and high-level theories, and the people were saying, we just want something practical, basic, something that we can take today and implement tomorrow. And so that's kind of how we started presenting, just say, hey, here's some practical uses for AI that you can implement starting like now. And that's kind
Yeah,
of
our presentations, like Jimmy mentioned, are very pragmatic.
yeah.
We can talk about the theory if you want, but
Yes.
we'd bore everybody in the room. And I think most lawyers now just want to know how to use the tools. They want to know, one, what the tools are in terms of which tools they should consider using, and then two, what they do, and then three, how to use them in everyday practice. And Jimmy does a phenomenal job, especially with the trial tech. My space is more sort of just using AI as a brainstorming tool, and that was sort of my dog and pony show. We've kind of merged the two, and there are other people. Jimmy mentioned Bob Christie. It's really fascinating because in our organization, there's probably like half dozen of us who, or probably more actually, who are very active in that space. And I'm not really familiar with or see other civil defense lawyers and other organizations be quite as active as we are. And so we kind of work off of each other and complement each other. And I learned as much from Jimmy and Bob than anybody else out there. And I enjoyed the camaraderie and the relationship.
That's wonderful. So going back into the world of theory just a little bit. So looking ahead, maybe 3 to 5 years, knowing what you know about and seeing what we're all seeing with AI and the trends so far, how do you envision AI changing the actual experience of either case prep or trial prep or even being in the courtroom over the next few years? Do you see AI drafting motions mid-trial, doing more real-time reactions, or something else entirely? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it's going to help us get up to speed quickly. I can tell you in almost every trial I've had, someone will say, hey, the excess carrier needs to know how you're going to handle the admission of these medical records where the plaintiff made an admission that he was doing something and being negligent. How are you going to get that into evidence? I need a memorandum on that. Well, I probably already have a case thought set up, and I can just have AI start drafting that. Also, like I said, on the motion practice, I just had a big motion here when we had 12 motions between the two parties. The judge said, hey, I need y'all to be over here next week to argue these 12 motions. And so I can use the AI tool to help me initially come up with an outline that I can tailor. And I think the judge appreciated it because he said, you seem so efficient when you presented the bullet points on all of your motions. But I use the AI tool to help me plan for that. So I think you're going to have to get up to speed a lot quicker. And the AI tool is going to help us do that.
Yeah, I agree. And I think you see platforms like CoCounsel for Westlaw, Lexis AI, and they're good. They continue to improve, and they will continue to improve in the near and long-term future. And they will be able to do more of the things you're suggesting in terms of not final, but I think decent first drafts of motions limine, motions that just come up in trial that we have to do ori tennis, that we have to just come up with, but we need to create some sort of paperwork to file with the court. I think more than AI, what I'm seeing and envisioning, and I mentioned this during the recent ABA seminar that we were at, was I think we're going to start seeing a lot more virtual reality in trial. And we're going to start seeing that happened, I think in December 2024, it happened in a Florida criminal courtroom during a hearing on the stand your ground law, which is a law we have in Florida that allows people to use weapons to stand their ground as a defensive posture. And the video was shown by the judge, and everybody had VR glasses to sort of put themselves in the shoes of the defendant. I could see that being used in personal injury claims and accident reconstruction issues, trucking accidents, slip and falls, accidents in construction sites, where one side or the other both have their engineer or their accident reconstructionist sort of create a scene, and it's sort of put in a video, and the juries and the judge can see it firsthand, and really kind of brings that moment to life. So I think holograms is also something that I can see coming up in the next few years. So not necessarily AI, but seeing the technology being pushed and putting the jury in the middle of a situation where they can themselves see what happened almost in real time. Obviously, it's after the fact, but make it seem as if it's happening in real time.
And another thing that I think the AI tools are going to
Yep.
get better at going forward is now their ability to deal with images. Let's just say I had a real bad slip and fall case. I can put in an image. This is where the employee was. This is where the fall happened. AI tool, can you analyze this image and give me some arguments that I can make in defense of the case, or either point out some weaknesses? And I tried that, and it gave me 8, 9, or 10 bullet points that were pretty on point. So its ability to look at images and give you suggestions on how to defend the case, I think is going to continually improve.
Yeah, and to that point as well, if you take photos of an accident in, let's say, cars, and you drop them into, let's say, one of the open models, and again, these are photos that are kind of out in the public, nothing that's confidential, proprietary, it can tell you, give you some thoughts on either suggesting that someone caused the accident or possible defenses or the seriousness of the accident. I have a case now that I did that for, and it was able to provide me a variety of arguments to suggest that even though visually the damage to the vehicle seemed like a lot, and again, we're on the defense side for your viewers and listeners, it didn't seem that bad for a variety of reasons, and explain why. And it went through photo by photo and said, well, if you look at this part of the photo, that part of the photo, you have a basis to argue that it wasn't that significant. So pretty fascinating things out there.
And I think it's also going to get better at, it's not quite there yet, but they've made the first big leap in creating demonstrative exhibits. And say, for example, you want to have here a list of things my defense expert did, here are the things the plaintiff's expert didn't do. Create me a nice chart for the jury to look at as a demonstrative exhibit when I'm giving my closing. And it's gotten much better at creating those right on the fly.
Absolutely. You both touch upon some very interesting things, and looking at it from the technology perspective, I agree with you 100%. So a lot of the newer models are improving in two different ways. One is that they're becoming more and more multimodal, which means that they can directly input those images that you mentioned. And as you were talking about the legal pad, Jimmy, a few minutes ago, I was thinking, that attorney who still wants to use the legal pad can now, the AI is good enough that you could take a picture of what's on the legal pad, and you could add that to its analysis, and it would be able to incorporate that into its reasoning for everything else. So that's one example.
I actually did some things where I wrote some dates of some gas deliveries on a legal pad, and I took a picture of it and told the AI tool to make me a chart of the deliveries of the gas, and it did a really good job.
Yeah, exactly. So the idea that it can take sort of, it can take in, as we humans see, whatever we would be able to see, whether it's a picture or whether it's a rendering of what we would see in real life, and then also apply enhanced reasoning. So not only is the capability of taking in inputs becoming broader, but also the reasoning capabilities themselves are becoming better. And so I think those two are pretty powerful together. And frankly, your point about the virtual reality, I happened to be there at that ABA session that you mentioned. And it was a wonderful session. And I remember there were quite a few questions at the end of that. And so in terms of from the audience, in terms of, hey, how is this going to work, and so on and so forth. And that sort of is a segue to my next question, which is, in society in general, especially with with the pace of technology as it is today and with AI and some of these other tools like virtual reality, what are some common fears, misconceptions, reasons for resistance that you specifically have been hearing from your peers, from judges, or even from clients about the use of some of these technologies, including AI? And how do you make the case for continuing to drive innovation even in the face of such resistance?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest problems that the AI suffers from is if you tell people that you use it to do something, they look at you like, well, you're cheating. I'm still having a critical analysis. I still have to decide the cases. I still have to decide the overall approach and the overall statutes. The AI tools are just assisting me, but the high-level decisions are still being made by the lawyer. So the fact that some people think if you use it, that you're somehow guilty, or you're cheating, or you're not putting in enough effort, I think that's the biggest misconception. I think with the AI tools.
Yeah, I think some attorneys see it as a shortcut that we shouldn't be doing, that we're over and above and better than that. And I agree that if it's a useful tool, we should use it. Kind of like when Westlaw and Lexis and other online database researchers came on board, and they're slow transitioning from sort of the book research to the online research. The idea today that anybody would go to a physical library and pull a book off the shelf and make copies is absurd. And I think we're sort of in the same period where we're transitioning from being very skeptical to having it adopted across the board. And we're just sort of going through those growing pains right now. But I would say within 3 years, those types of debates will be put to bed and we'll be past that. But right now, there's a concern, like it's kind of an easy way out. We're not really using our own brain. I think some lawyers really believe it's going to replace us. I think some lawyers feel it's going to reduce the monies we can make because AI will do it and we can't. And but the technology is coming, whether we agree with it or not, whether we stick our heads in the sand or not, it's happening, and it's beyond our control. And that train already left the station. And either you're going to learn and adopt and use it, or you're just going to be left behind.
And then I think one of the things I think some lawyers forget, at the end of the day, we are hired to work hard, and people hire us to exercise good judgment. And so if we have more AI tools and we're able to get to a place faster on the facts and on summaries, it's going to help us to be able to make those good judgments. And there's some things the AI tool probably won't ever be able to do very well. Like I had a situation this morning where I had to look at a case and analyze, should we remove this case to federal court or should we let it stay in state court? And there was a bunch of nuanced analysis with that, which I put in the judgment category. So there always will be a need for lawyers who exercise good judgment. And if we have more tools, more technology, more capability, we're going to make better judgments in the end. Because at the end of the day, the judgment is always going to rest with the lawyer, not the AI tool.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Just, wrapping up, just a couple more questions. I think this has been a wonderful session with both of you, Jimmy and Frank. Thinking back to when you were both junior attorneys, technology and perhaps even legal practice was different in some ways. So what advice would you give young litigators today specifically about developing not only obviously their traditional legal skills, but also technology competency and how to prioritize what is important versus what is not, and how can these litigators be better prepared for the world of tomorrow?
I think that's an excellent question. I think for young litigators, I think you need to be able to be sure you have a basic understanding of the textbook approach first before you jump to all the fancy tools. So for example, there's the My Way book on trial technique. And so this is an excellent book. It has how to do a cross-examination, how to do a direct examination, how to pick a jury. So always start here first if you're a young lawyer, and then come to the fancy AI tools and tech tools. And then there's another book written by Justice Scalia on the art of persuading judges. I think is an excellent book that every litigator should have. It talks about how to write briefs, how to make oral arguments. So be sure you understand treatises and book concepts first to get you a good basic background, and then jump to let the AI tool help you improve. So I think sometimes young litigators don't get that under them first. I think if you get the textbook approach down, then it'll make you a better lawyer going forward. Because sometimes the AI tool will give you bad questions or bad advice. And if you got this basic textbook down, then you'll be able to eliminate that. So don't forget about the basics. This be my advice.
Yeah, and there's a lot of resources out there that weren't available when Jimmy and I were young lawyers. When I started, there was really not much of an internet. There wasn't podcasts. There were webinars. Lawyers were much more protective of how they did things. And so even CLE invariably were in person, and they were pretty generic because nobody really wanted to tell you the secret sauce. So you learn some basic things. I remember being, impressed by any CLE that I saw when I was a young lawyer. And now, and I don't know how long it started, but everybody shares everything online. And if you are an expert in something, if you're a lawyer, you've probably been interviewed in a podcast like this one, or you've done a webinar, or you've done some YouTube video or a white paper, and there's nothing that's not within your fingertips if you're a lawyer. If you want to learn about AI, there are podcasts specifically directing on AI for lawyers. There are YouTube videos. There are CLE courses that are free. So whatever you want to learn as a young lawyer, pretty much anybody, whatever profession you are, it's out there on the internet for you to access.
Yep. That makes a lot of sense. So final question for both of you. Again, I've really enjoyed this conversation with both of you. I'm sure that we could go on for longer, but what is one question that I should have asked you, but I didn't? If at all.
I thought you did a very good job of
I
asking.
think you covered it.
Okay, well, thank you. I appreciate that. Okay, well,
I think, yeah, maybe one question would be,
Sure.
maybe what's one of your favorite tech apps or whatever, I think. And for me, it's obviously, there's an app called TrialPad for iPad. It's in the Lit Suite group of apps. It's TrialPad, Transcript Pad, Doc Review Pad, and now Timeline Pad. So I think if there's one app you're going to get as a litigator, I think it would be the TrialPad suite of apps from Lit Suite.
Yeah, and for me, I use several of the large language models. I just pay for it myself, but I use ChatGPT, Claude, Perplexity, and now Grok. It's one of my more recent additions. And what I'll do is I'll typically type in the same prompt in all four and find that for a given question, one platform may be better than the other, or I may kind of combine or learn from them differently, because they obviously use different algorithms. Even if they've all scraped the internet for the same data, the way they process that data is differently. It's all proprietary to that company. And so I'll use those platforms to almost compete against each other to get the best response that I need.
That's wonderful. Well, with that, Jimmy, Frank, thank you so much for your time. I really enjoyed learning so much from you, having this conversation with you, and I'm sure our audience will as well. So thank you so much.
Great,
Take
thank
care.
you.
Yep.
Thank you for having us.
Yep.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Litigator's Edge podcast, brought to you by Threadio.